David coming to you today from the last stop on the Middle Eastern tour. This is Kuwait City in the country of Kuwait. You see downtown in the background, we're over in the marina area and just having a wonderful time. Last night there were actually thunderstorms here, which is kind of odd to see. You see lightning bolts and everything else very close to the ground, and they actually had rain as we were coming in, so wasn't expecting that. But just having a great time looking at the differences in the different countries over here. I operated very naively that all the countries were similar. Well, there are some similarities, but there are some incredible differences as well. So it's sort of like over here, it's the similarities that you have by being in the U.S., but the difference is by being in South Carolina versus California. I mean, so there are some differences. Okay, MSOM 602, Lesson 4 review, Lesson 5 preview. Let's get started. The discussion board question for Lesson 4 was one that I always like, and I like it because it really gets to the heart of what you believe about leadership. And so I asked the question, is leadership caught or taught? There are some interesting videos that you could see on this one. There are tons of research articles where people talk about this. But the key for me is it really will depend on your definition of leadership. And if you have a Drew Dudley type of definition of leadership, then perhaps you think that it can be taught. But you may operate on the other perspective and say there are innate things that you have as an individual that just have to have an opportunity to come out. And so if you operate under that assumption, then you'll say, yes, there may be some opportunities for people to show some leadership tendencies, but true leadership is much, much different. And so I'm not sure that there is a standard definition, because I can find people on both sides of the equation on this one. But if you ask me what my opinion is, and you didn't do that, but anyway, thanks for asking anyway, I really believe more in the latter. Because I think there are some things that are innate in individuals that have to have an opportunity to get out, and when they do, they really exhibit those types of things. Now, that does not mean that other people who do not have those types of innate tendencies are not leaders in their own right. But again, I kind of fall on the other side of the spectrum. Again, I don't grade basis whether or not you agree with me or not, but whether or not you have an opinion and that you support it with your research. So that was discussion. That was a discussion board for Lesson 4. The memo exercise this week talked about why in servant leadership. So remember, your first memo exercise focused on what you defined for your organization or your department, what servant leadership is in your view. Now this week you describe for them why you're moving to servant leadership. And I've said this before. Again, too often in organizations we will tell people what every day long, all day long. And so as a leader of the department, you say, we need to do this, we need to do this, we need to do this, and they're sitting back scratching their head going, why are we doing that? And so unless you describe that and are very specific in that, they'll make it up in their own minds and say, okay, I guess that's why we're doing it. And many times what they make up as their why is different than the real why that you have going forward. So the encouragement that I have for you as current leaders and future servant leaders, hopefully, is that you are very specific on whys going forward. Again, sometimes people won't agree with you on the whys, but at least they'll understand specifically why you're going in that particular direction. Okay? So this is a really important one. Now, the next one that you'll do, we'll focus on something else. We'll talk about a little bit in Lesson 5. So that was why servant leadership. And then the assignment this week had you read some things from moral intelligence that I really, really like, because this is really about aligning what you believe with your actions. And so servant leaders are different. They're different, and they can cope in many different ways. But they need to stay true, as the reading had told you this week, to their moral compass. And so if you think about this, there are two definitions they provided this week. They talked about moral intelligence, which is knowing what to do, okay? So you may have the knowledge as to what needs to be done morally to really exhibit servant leadership skills, but unless you actually do them, knowledge doesn't get you very far, right? And so the second definition, the first one, moral intelligence, knowing what to do, and then the second definition was moral competence, which was actually doing it. And so it's a real balance, if you will, and getting that alignment between knowing what to do, moral intelligence, and actually going out and doing it, moral competence. And so, too often, I think people get caught in the middle on those. And so, the key message coming out of this discussion, actually this assignment, is to make sure that you're in alignment and you understand that it takes more than just knowledge. It actually takes action as well. Okay? So, hopefully, you enjoyed lesson 4. It's one of my favorites out there. So those are just my few thoughts on lesson 4. Okay, let's move forward to lesson 5. Lesson 5 really talks about and continues upon that pathway of knowledge to action. And so putting the servant leadership characteristics that you're beginning to learn about, study about, and putting them into action. So moving from head knowledge to action. And discussion 1 begins with the topic of leadership point of view. And each one of us will have a leadership point of view, whether we think we do or not. And that leadership point of view can be influenced by certain people, okay? And so I'm asking you to describe the key influencers in your life. Now, these key influencers, I think, don't just focus on one person. Focus on them in different aspects of your life. So you may have someone who's a key influencer in your life on personal things, the way that you approach personal relationships, those types of things. But you may also have a key influencer from a business perspective or from a professional perspective, someone who's invested in you, someone who has, over time, said things to you that have really impacted the way that you approach things or your thought process on those. And then finally, there may be someone who has a spiritual influence on you. So someone who you've respected over time, someone whose approach to all things life, okay, from a spiritual perspective, it's easy to say, spiritual perspective, they have been a key influencer in your life. So just talk about those. I always love these too because it really gives you an opportunity to share some of those key characteristics. And my hope is that those key characteristics will go from just, hey, I know that person, they've been good to me, to I want to emulate some of the things that they do in the relationships that I develop. Sort of like paying it forward, sort of like discipling the next generation, if you will, of leaders. And so that is leadership point of view. Again, make sure that you focus on the kind of the 3 areas of the stool there, 3 legs of the stool: personal, business, and spiritual. And then memo exercise, I referenced earlier, the so what. Now, here's the key thing in organizations. Anytime that I used to ask the people on my team to do anything, I'd always define what it was. So remember, the first memo exercise is what. The second one is, why are we doing this? But the third one is really the part that if you don't do it well, you will not get the action needed. So, yeah, they'll know all the things. They'll know your definition of servant leadership. They'll know why you're moving the organization in that direction. But what you want them to do is to connect with that and actually help. So you want them to help pull the boat, moving forward. And so this is where you will talk to them about what's in it for them. So hopefully what you're seeing in servant leadership and the characteristics that you're putting together is that there's a personal benefit here. There's something that can help individuals not only in their professional life, but in their personal life and in their spiritual life. And so what I want you to do in this particular memo exercise is help connect that. Help connect it so that people walk out of reading that memo and going, yeah, I want to do that. I want to move forward because it's going to be good for me. It's going to be something that I find will be helpful moving forward. So that is the third and final memo exercise. And then finally this week, the assignment is one that I really like. It's from 5 Minutes on Mondays. I only have you do a few readings in 5 minutes on Mondays, but that's one of those books I would encourage you to read it wall to wall. There are great stories in there. Alan Lurie does a great job of talking about really leadership criteria, leadership principles. But the one I'm specifically having you do this week is he gave a graduation address to a group of rabbis. And what he's calling them to do is he's calling them to action in his speech to them. He's encouraging them to go forth. So the message in this address to these rabbis are to go forth. And so, again, turning knowledge into action. All right? So that's the message in Lesson 5. How to actually do something and not just talk about it. Okay? I hope you all have a great week. I'll be talking to you on the other side. I'll be back in Dallas probably for the next video. Class is more than half over now, and it's going by very, very quickly. Encourage you to, again, do a couple of things. Make sure that you read my comments on your papers and your discussion boards in the grade book. I go out of my way to make sure I'm very thorough on those. The second thing, go to the CSU online library. If you're not using peer-reviewed sources, you're getting some points counted off. You need to make sure that you go in there and find those as well. The third thing on discussion boards, make sure you post them early in the week because, again, if you post in the latter part of the week and you go in there, you don't have anything to respond to. So, again, keep those things focused and forefront as you approach Lesson 5. All right? Have a great week. Study hard. Chat with you soon.